Welcome back, my name's Steve and thank you for joining me on my photography journey. Today we're going to go into a bit more detail on Lightroom. So last time we looked at the basics of editing, so the histograms, some of the sliders for exposure and contrast and things like that. Now the next stage that we want to look at is the colour. So I'm going to look at how we can change the colour, what we can do to manipulate it and put your own stamp on the actual final image. So again, we'll carry on with the same one that we were looking at last time, so the picture of the bridge surrounded by the trees. So one of the first places that I want to adjust things is right at the bottom. So let's scroll down here all the way to the bottom. And then we've got this area for calibration. So again, remember it might be closed like this. You may just have the word. Click on that to open the panel up. So in here, we've got different controls. So we've got one for shadows, one for red primary, green primary, and blue primary. And what this does, this calibrates all of the reds, blues, and greens in your entire image. So with every pixel being made up of red, blue, and green, this is how you can affect the overall colour in that image. And this is a good way to match colours between different cameras. So if I had my Nikon and I was taking pictures from that, but also wanted those to match pictures that I was taking from my iPhone, I could then come in here, adjust the calibration of the colours for one of those cameras so that it matched the other one. And that would mean that anything that I took a green would be the same in both cameras. So it just makes your pictures look a lot more consistent and the colours to be a lot more similar between the two different cameras. Now I tend to do this before even starting the editing process. So let's have a little look at what we can do. So there's not much red in this picture as you can see, but let's move the red slider, the hue. So hue is the actual colour of the red. Now there's a slight difference there, and you can see up at the top the histogram is moving slightly as well as we move side to side, but we'll double click to put it back to 0. And then we'll do the same with the blue. Again, there is a bit of a change. You can see it looks a lot more like autumn now, and we go all the way the other way with that, and things are looking very bright and green. But again, we'll go back to 0. Where we're going to get the biggest change is with the green, because there's so much green in this picture. So we can change what colour that green is, so we can make it less bright green and more towards the yellow side of things. That's all the way to one extreme, and then that's a very minty, very green, isn't it? Let's put it where we want it. So I think back 0 is around about here. I don't want it quite that green. Let's come down to around about there. So it's a bit more yellowy. That's our hue. So that means we've changed what the color green actually looks like. Now we can choose how saturated any of these colors are. So again, with the red one, all one way, all the other, you can see the differences. Double click to get it back to the middle. And I think again, green is the one that will have the biggest impact here. Don't want it too faded out, but we don't want it hugely bright, so maybe around about there. That looks okay to me. Now, if this was the way that I wanted my colours in my Nikon to always look, so that the green was more yellow and less saturated, what I could do is create a preset of this so that I can just with one button apply it to all of my pictures in the future that come out of this camera. And I'm not actually going to do that today because I've done that with something else, which I will show you in another video. And that is that color chart in the background. We'll talk about that and how to use it and everything in the video in the future. But for now, you have the ability to create a preset from this calibration if you want to. So now we've got this looking roughly how I want it to look. We can then scroll back up and concentrate on this area here. So this is your HSL sliders, your hue, saturation, and luminance. So hue is how the color looks. So it's well, let's have a look at an example. So let's again go for the green. You can have it looking very green or very yellow. Reds can be anywhere from pink to orange. Again, this doesn't really show up in this picture, but if you look at the sliders in the picture, you can actually see the different colors. So green, as we've just seen, is quite obvious. The blues, so you can go a very cyan to a very purple, and then they all kind of overlap slightly. So then you've got purple to magenta, and magenta to kind of a red color. So they all overlap, and that's how you can play with the colors in your image in order to get the picture looking exactly how you want it to. And you can do this for the hue, so the actual color of it, the saturation, so how much of that color there is. So going all the way up on your saturation will make the greens very, very green. Taking it all the way down removes the green from your pictures. So it makes everything look a lot more muted, a lot closer to black and white. So what black and white is taking the saturation out of all of these different colors. Let's take it all the way down on all of these. And there you go, you've got a black and white image. The other way, you can take them all the way up to the top, and we'll see colors starting to come back in as we do this. Got a very, very saturated image here, which I am not a fan of, but it just shows what you can do. Double clicking in the middle will bring everything back to 0 there. Now, what we actually want to do here is just change things. Oh, and luminance. Luminance is how bright a color is. So if we've got any of these colors, they don't really make much of a difference, except I'm guessing, as usual, green. So that makes everything brighter, that makes everything darker. And then between those different options, you can then play around with the image and get it looking exactly how you want to. So I would always start with hue, and what we can do here is, as well as choosing the individual color on the sliders, we've got this little tool here which is kind of like a target. So click on that and move your cursor over your picture, and as you do that, you can see on the right hand side that different sliders are being highlighted as you move it around, and that's telling you which colors will be impacted if you adjust what's there. So to adjust something, let's say this watercolor, which you click, then move your mouse up to increase the hue and down to decrease the hue. So you can see that this one is moving the yellow and the green sliders, but by different amounts. So it's mainly focusing on the yellow, but the green is also moving slightly as well. So you can get the picture looking how you want for that particular bit. So let's do another one over here. So again, up and down, and this time we're using the orange and the yellow rather than the green. So there we go, it's looking a bit more autumnal. Now we've got the hues, how we want them. Let's go into our saturation. So this, like I said, is how much of that color there is. So further to the right, a higher positive number is the more color, the more kind of pure that color is. And the further to the left, the less of that color is in there, so the more kind of black and white that image looks. So again, you've got that tool, so you can select a particular image in there and choose how saturated or unsaturated it is. So moving it up and down. One thing to be careful of though, if you move it all the way down or all the way up, then you kind of lose that relationship between the two sliders. So if you do that, I would reset it, get your target back again, and then choose your options, and then just gradually do it. You don't want to be having big changes in it. You just want to do everything nice and gently. So there's kind of a more reddy color in here. Let's bring that out slightly. Remember, you've got your keyboard shortcut of the backslash, which gives you the before and the after, before, after, so that you can see what's changed, what you've done that affects that image. And remember, all we've done is use these different sliders. So let's use our luminance next. And then what this does, like I said, is how bright different areas are. So this sky area seems quite bright to me. So let's try and take the colors out of that. But as you can see, it doesn't actually affect any of these. That's because it's such a white area. You can't affect the very whites and the very blacks. It's just the bits in between that you affect with this, because they're the ones with color in. So remember, black is no color at all and white is all the colors. So you would need to adjust that using your exposure, your histogram, and those kind of tools that we looked at last week. So just a reminder, link up there to go back to look at that video. So then luminance in this picture, let's make this bridge slightly less bright. So let's bring that down. And you can see the colors underneath the arches coming through a bit more. There we go, that's looking quite good. Anything else we want to change here? So it's quite dark over here. Let's see if the luminance can do anything here. So that brightens it up just slightly. Again, not making big changes. That's the before, that's the after. So you can see some big changes there. And so just click on that again to remove it. So then that is your sliders. That's how easy it is to do this, to adjust your image from looking completely one way when you begin to looking completely different when you finish. We've got it set to HSL. You can set it to the individual colors and then have on each of these your hue, saturation and luminance. I prefer to work on this HSL one where you've got the hues, saturation and luminance all separated, or you can have it all together and just have one big thing here. So that just gives you different ways to control it depending on what you prefer. I prefer it on HSL and then look at each of these individually. Now, why would you want to do this? This is the best way to put your creative stamp on an image. This is how you can adjust the colors, make things look how you want them to look. In my case, I generally try and make them look how things looked when I was there. Actually taking the picture, so trying to get the colors to be as natural as possible. I might push some bits here and there to try and highlight different bits, or to make it look a particular way, but generally speaking, I'm trying to make it as natural as possible. But this is where your creativity comes in. If there's a particular look that you like, so if you like things that are a lot more blue, let's say, so everything looks a bit cooler, you've got that option to make these changes and to have that as your particular look, as your particular style of picture, so that when people look at it, they think, oh, that's Steve's picture because he's got that one particular look that he likes to use on his photos. And this is how you do that. So it doesn't matter what that look is. It doesn't matter whether it's something that you want to make look as natural as possible, make it look as unnatural as possible, or somewhere in between. This is where your creativity, your individual style, the whole subjective side of photography comes in. So the editing, you can make things look how you want it to look. As a reminder, that's before, that's after. Looks completely different from just a few changes to the sliders on here. Let's move that one all the way down there and look, again, completely different. I don't like that at all, but it is an option. You can do that, but you can have it somewhere in the middle. So it's just a bit of a change, but there we go. These are the options that you can play with. I'm just trying to tell you how you can do it, give you the tools to change the image as much as you like. So there we go. That's your calibration and your HSL sliders. So a big bit of the color within Lightroom. So we've now covered how to navigate around Lightroom. We've covered histograms. We've covered the basic exposure adjustments. We've covered some keyboard shortcuts, colors today. So next time, let's have a look at masking. And that means we can then create some more local adjustments rather than affecting the entire image altogether. So thank you for watching. I hope you've learned something today. And don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you again next week on my photography journey. Have a great week. Bye.